Hello and welcome to Matters of the Heart. Keep going, don't stop. Today we're going to talk about affair proofing your marriage. Okay, I know that this is going to be a very tough topic. This whole series is great, but today it's going to be really difficult. But at the same time, it's going to help us kind of put into action. You know, there's going to be practical ways that can help us proof. Is that affair prove your marriage? Okay, because one of the most devastating things that can happen to a marriage, that it can go to out of all the experiences it can go through, this is one of the toughest ones to go through, which is an affair. And a lot of times people are convinced that affair is a physical thing. But when there's no sex involved, it can be also an affair, and we're going to talk about that. An affair really has to do with secrecy and deception. And so we're going to see some tips. We're going to see some secrets to avoid this in the marriage, to what was the word again? Affair proof your marriage, okay? So women seldom have affairs because of sex. Majority of women do not have an affair because of sex. It's because they have a need to be communicated, to be understood, to make them feel special. And when that doesn't happen, the enemy to be heard sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so those are things we have to understand, that men and women have different reasons for the majority of the time of why they have an affair. Mm-hmm. I know for men need to have fun. And when men are not having fun, healthy fun, I'm not talking about these crazy fun, healthy fun, then they look for elsewhere, and that's not a good thing. Okay, so whether you've experienced infidelity or would like to prevent it from happening, affair proofing your marriage is essential for your marriage, okay? So let's go ahead and talk about a little bit more about adultery, understanding adultery, okay? First thing is that between 1/3 and 1/2 of all marriages are affected by infidelity.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. And to be honest, I think it's probably even, when we look into what Jesus calls an affair, I think it's a lot higher than that. A lot higher than that. Exodus 34:14 says, "For you shall worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God." In marriage, jealousy is a protective warning when someone or something else becomes more important than your relationship. There is a good, healthy jealousy. Okay, obviously there's a toxic jealousy, and I know sometimes even God's name gets a negative view because of this passage that says God is a jealous God. Why would I want to serve a God that is jealous?
Dennis, there's this song that he is jealous for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not jealous of you, or it's for you. So it's almost like a jealousy. We have to understand that God gave us emotions,
mm-hmm.
And they're all our emotions. This is my opinion, is that our emotions are protective mechanisms for ourselves, for our marriage, for our children, And so when something is wrong, it's like an alert goes off, and to that feeling of jealousy, that initial feeling, is an alert. Something's not right. Now, it could be that something's not right in you, or something's not right in what's happening. But regardless, it needs to be attended. It needs to be taken care of.
It needs to be attended. It needs to be checked on. It needs to
go
through the word, go through, like the word of God says, take all thoughts captive, everything under the feet of Jesus. Mm-hmm. When it says God is a jealous God, he is not talking about there's a lack of him. Yeah. Okay, he is complete. He is perfect. He is holy. God is good. Mm-hmm. Not only is that God is good, it's not that he chooses to be good, it's that he is good. And God is love. God is not choosing to love, God is love. So there's a huge difference between, like you said, I loved it. he is not jealous of you. He's jealous for you because he is protecting that relationship. When someone comes in to attack your relationship, you got to pay
There's
attention.
danger.
You got to pay attention. Stranger danger. That's right. Okay, so in marriage, that's what that is. Now, marriage is designed to operate as the top priority, except for your personal relationship with God, of course, right? So if marriage is not your top priority after God, it's not going to work. And a lot of times when we lose focus on what's important in our lives as our relationship with God and then our relationship with our spouse, things get out of hand. It's an open door for so many things to happen.
I see a lot of I've seen a lot of marriages where it's they'll put God first and then they'll put the kids, you know, and you almost feel like you're a bad parent if you feel
our kids know.
Our kids know, but I mean,
mama comes
you
first.
almost feel some people may feel bad or feel wrong because they put their spouse. No, it's your dad or your mom, and then but it's talking about priority. And if you put your marriage first, your spouse first, your children are seeing that example. You know, you're giving them an example for what their marriage is supposed to look like in the future. Because the same people that put their children first, when their children get married, they expect for their children to be first in that marriage, but that's not what was given as an example for those kids, you know. So I just thought that was really interesting. I see that a lot, especially with single moms when they get remarried. It's there's an order of things. I know there's a lot of trauma and some things that happen when you in divorce and when you get remarried, but putting things in the priority and the order that God has ordained is going to bring balance into your life. Why would you marry someone if you didn't think that person is supposed to be put in that position, in that place, you know, as God has asked?
That's a good question.
So
that's a good question, and the fact that sometimes when we don't plan things out the way we thought it would work out, we come in with not knowing, or even sometimes even ignoring, like for example the example that you said about getting remarried and having someone else. You know, sometimes stepmoms, stepdads struggle because they want to be part of that,
but they're not protect their kids.
But they're not included. You know, so it's always good to always seek out for God's purpose first.
For our kids, they know.
Oh yeah, they know.
They know that
my woman comes before you guys. They know it.
I think it's Caleb. Caleb's like, I know you love mommy. You know, he'll say things like that. But you know, all jokes aside, what we want is for them to, when they get married, when they find that one person, that they understand that person is priority above all other things, and it just creates a balance and order the way that God intended for it to be.
So let's look at this. An affair is taking the most sacred expressions of intimacy and giving them to someone other than your spouse. Affairs begin on an emotional level, and this is something that I remember someone that was dear to me had mentioned something that was like, it just threw me off. Like, I wouldn't expect him to say this because he was a key part in our lives many years ago, and he said, you know, my wife is not my best friend. She's my wife. You know, and she was like, I have my best friends, but she's my wife, and I'm like, no wonder.
Yeah, no.
I was like, no wonder you guys are have those big bad fights and things like that. And so there's a lot of people that think that way. You know, my wife is my wife. She's, in other words, my partner. She's the one that does this. I do this. You know, it's almost like a job, or like a, you know, this is a company and this is her role. This is my role. Separate. And yeah, there's times that we come together and be intimate, but we meet. Besides that, besides that, we're just You know, if I need to talk to somebody about my feelings, I go to my best friend. And you can have your best friend, but where, you know, it's almost like it's a partnership, but it's a weird partnership, and that's not what God wants. Everything that, as a matter of fact, the greatest things about marriage is the intimacy. It's the emotional intimacy. It's the fact that I have issues, and her strength usually are my weaknesses, and she comes in and helps me with my weaknesses. And so it makes us better. And then, and you know, like, for example, something that I talked to the church about on Sunday about man is that, man, it's okay to show emotions, but we're not going to learn that if we don't allow the person that has not many issues with expressing their emotions to help us with that. You know, women are good at that. We can learn from women as we become one. And so if we don't do that, you'd be surprised to find yourselves in a situation. You might find yourself in a situation in an affair, or you know, I've never really talked to my wife this way, but now I find it so much easier to talk to this person about my emotions like never before. Well, how did that happen? And we're going to look into that.
Dennis, something else is that I believe intimacy is knowing your thoughts. You know, because I love that you had made mention that an affair is not, it's not always, usually it's not, that has nothing to do with sex. It has to do with emotions, you know. And intimacy is knowing your thoughts. It's when me and you as husband and wife, that I know your thoughts. You know my thoughts. You know what because we talk about it. We communicate about it. But when you start sharing those thoughts with someone else, there's a boundary that's being crossed, you know, and that's you're in a danger zone where there could be there's an emotional connection with someone else that was not supposed to happen, you know. I know marriages where they have, and it could go both ways. I want to say. A female has a male best friend, or a male has a female best friend, and then they get married. And it's like, you know, when you get married, that best friend relationship, it either is going to be the best friend of both of you, or that relationship of best friend is forfeited with your spouse, because it's impossible to have. It shouldn't be that way, where you have a opposite sex best friend and then your wife, because you're sharing, once again, those thoughts, those intimate things with one or the other is going to get hurt.
Yeah.
You know, and I see that a lot, and we always, when we talk with people, we always let them know that best friend relationship is now becomes a friend relationship. And you and your spouse, you and your spouse is now your best friend.
Exactly.
But I've also seen it with males. Like my husband would have a best friend, and that's why I'm telling you that the thoughts thing. Your spouse wants to know that when she talks to you or when he talks to you, that you're not going off and telling your best friend the things that are discussed between a husband and a wife. That's, once again, that's that emotional boundary that you have to work extra hard to keep intact, you know, that it's sacred between you and your spouse.
That's so good. Now that you kind of jumped into that, so a question for everyone that's watching, and my wife, now that she kind of jumped into that, you can have an affair without having sex. What are your thoughts on that? Agree or disagree? And I think we've kind of shared our thoughts on that.
I don't think someone wakes up and says, you know what, I think I'm going to have an affair today. I want to have an affair. People don't, the affairs don't happen intentionally. Affairs happen, it's like that water over a rock, who would think that a drop of water could break a rock? Over time it can. So it begins with those conversations, with those that emotional boundary that you kind of loosened up with someone, and as a marriage, my job is to make sure that that's protected, and your job is to make sure that that's protected with me.
And I think there's a struggle, like a lot of times, and I remember when we were youth pastors, one of the popular questions that kids would ask is how far is too far? And so and then you would find yourself in a situation where you would, you want to answer their questions. You want to let them know, okay, this is this is too far. This is the line, okay? But the more important question is, why do you focus? Why are you trying to find the boundaries? Why is it that what is it? Where's your heart? Where's that coming from? And a lot of times, as believers, we have to be careful not to fall into that situation. For example, temptations. Being tempted is not a sin, okay? But when you fall into the temptation, it's a sin. But a lot of times we don't know when if we're still in temptation or if we actually committed the sin. And Jesus makes it very clear, okay? It's one thing that you see a woman and you find her beautiful, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you find her beautiful and you start imagining something else that you shouldn't be imagining, and you get, you appreciate it or whatever you want to think, or what your mind, there's an excitement for that, you committed a sin. And we're going to see that Matthew 5:27-28 says, go ahead and read it, baby.
Your ancestors have been taught never commit adultery. However, I say to you, if you look with lust in your eyes at the body of a woman who is not your wife, you've already committed adultery in your heart.
So lust.
Dennis, I want to make note. I don't know if this was many years ago, but one of the most impacting moments in our marriage was, I remember one time you said, hey, I need to talk to you. And I was like, okay, and you said, I last night I had a dream, and you told me that you had a dream, and you described the dream, and you had told me the things that passed by your mind, and there was a shame to it with you, when you talked to me about that dream. You didn't have to tell me that dream, but what I saw in you was that as my husband, you wanted to have integrity even in your dreams, even in the thoughts that you had. And so when you told me that, you were confessing something to me, but in that confession, the enemy had no foothold in our marriage.
Bring it in the light.
Because after that conversation, we prayed, we talked about it, and we prayed, and I actually had more respect for you because you didn't have to tell me those things. Those are things that are hidden that husbands don't need to, or they feel ashamed to tell their spouses. But those are thoughts that the enemy puts in our minds, or whatever the case may be, because that's not the type of person that you are. But in you confessing or telling me those things, we shut the door to whatever the plan of the enemy had. And I ended up respecting you more because, like, wow, this is the type of husband that I have, that he even to that extent wants to have integrity with me in in our marriage.
Yeah, and that's what the enemy wants, to keep you in shame. And so the quicker you are in sharing your struggles with your spouse, and I'm assuming that she's a Christian woman, but even not being a Christian woman, it's good to have those moments and deal with it. Say, hey, I'm struggling with this, because Jesus made it very clear. It's not just about committing a physical sin, but it's also committing an emotional sin. Okay, desiring. When you desire a woman, that's a sin. You need to repent to the Lord and make sure there's no open door for that. Okay, so now I want to talk about building a strong emotional foundation after my wife interrupts me.
I'm sorry. I have one more thing.
Go ahead, baby.
After that conversation,
You remembering?
I'm just thinking something that we did. After that conversation, what we did was, I don't know if you remember, but we controlled what we watched on TV.
Oh yeah.
Like we had this conversation, we made sure that now you remember, right? So
I remember even the theaters when we would both go look down, and I'd be
Because-
like, "Baby, tell me when it's over." I'm not looking
Well,
either.
no, I wasn't looking either. But what I'm saying is that it's not just about telling your spouse. It's about telling your spouse, and then what can we do together to so maybe there's a marriage out there that a spouse is battling with pornography or lust issues. Your best defense is talking to your spouse. That's what the enemy's going to put in your mind is not to talk to your spouse. But your spouse helps protect you, and so for us, it was me, okay, then we're not going to watch these type of movies or these type of scenes. We're going to fast forward or, things like that. And I remember that we did that.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so building a strong emotional foundation. Here's secret number 1. Make a covenant decision to never turn your heart away from your spouse. And I remember having conversations with people that have struggled with this, and the reason why they even are looking elsewhere is because their hearts have been turned away from their spouse. Okay, you treasure whatever your treasures are. That's where your heart is. Okay, so a lot of times that's the struggle, not seeing the value in what God has given you, the value of what you have. Okay, and so when you don't see the value, then your heart turns to other things. And we see that in so many things. Okay, so it's very important to understand to never turn your heart away from your spouse. And if you have, we're going to talk about this later on what we can do to get our hearts back aligned.
Can you give an example? Because I know maybe somebody's hearing that. What do you mean turn your heart away from your spouse? Because how would you explain that in a real scenario?
The word that comes to me is your attention, your focus, your energy, that you're being intentional, that when you are at work, you look forward to seeing your wife, okay? When you come home, you want to make sure she's okay. That's why the word treasure is so important. Where your heart is at, is where what you treasure. So it's one thing to say, yeah, I love my wife, but you never really worried about how she is, or even when there's times that you have that look, like something is wrong, like something is on your mind or something like that.
I walk around with that.
And if your thought is, I'm not gonna ask her, then she's gonna tell me, and then there's gonna be a long conversation. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Guys, we do that. Don't be honest, be real. Okay, something is going on with your wife. She seems overwhelmed, and you're like, let me stay on my side.
I don't want to ask her.
I don't want to ask her because then she's gonna ask for something that's gonna, And so, if you're not careful, that's really turning your heart away, because that's not what Jesus calls us to. Jesus. That's not how Jesus is with us. And so we have to be like, okay, baby, what's wrong? I see it in your face, and be willing to, that's your heart towards her. When you see something wrong, when you see that what you value the most in your household, something is wrong, you're going to want to know what's going on. That's what it means to never turn your heart away from the Lord. And so those are things you gotta look into. Does that explain?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and read Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4 and 5.
Marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure, for God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, "Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you." All
right, so forsake means to turn your heart away. It goes back. So to be forsaken. And it is possible to turn your heart away from someone next to you. Wow. And so we have to think about that. Forsaking people, we do it quite a bit. And so we got to be careful that we don't find ourselves doing that in our marriages. Okay. God promises never to leave you and never to turn his heart away. So when it says never forsake you, he never turned his heart away from you. So what does that mean to you? If you let us know on the comments, what does that mean to you, baby?
Well, I love that.
Since I asked you first.
I love that. Um, I think it has to do with value. I remember, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, we were having this discussion on our trips. You know, when we're long travel, we just start talking. And you had told me that, or I think you mentioned it before too, about recognizing the value that your spouse has, you know. And it's amazing to know that God would never forsake us. He never turns his heart away from us because we are valuable to him. We have value in the eyes of God. I think that's beautiful. I think that's wonderful.
That is awesome. And so just like God has covenant relationship with us, we have a covenant with our spouse. Now, regardless of any reasons we may find, a covenant says we will never leave nor forsake our spouse, never turn our heart away. So that's so important to understand how covenant matters in a marriage. Okay, when we take our vows, when we present our vows, that's a covenant, and it should never be broken. And the moment we break our covenant, whenever we take our eyes off of our spouse and focus it on someone else and value something else, then we have forsaken, and we have to turn our hearts back to our spouse. Okay, and I believe it's possible. I believe when you allow God to help you, to heal you, to forgive you, and to strengthen you, and to renew your heart, that He can give your heart, that He can help you turn your heart back to your spouse. Now, what are some warning signs that you might be turning your heart away from your spouse? Think about that and let us know of some warning signs that you may have go through, because we're going to go through a few of them right now. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. How to recognize an emotional affair, because it always starts an emotional affair. Okay, there's no such thing as starting straight to physical. Okay, it starts first with the mind, starts first with the heart. Okay,
The crossing of boundaries.
crossing of boundaries. So, number one, most meetings, okay, and conversations are kept secret from your partner. Okay, in other words, you don't mention anything to your wife, and you try to rush it as it's not important. You know, we just had a conversation. It's not important. I don't need to tell her. Okay, you got to be careful with that.
Well, there's something else. Like, I've seen, I don't know, let me see how I can explain it. Like, something bad, negative happens to you, and then my first initial reaction is to call you as my husband, as the person that I share my intimate thoughts, my frustrations, things like that. And it's you listen, but you also will let me know, okay, check yourself in this or so forth, whatever. But there are times where instead of calling your spouse, you call someone else, and you're calling that person just took that conversation, that moment, and now you don't find it necessary to talk to your spouse. So all of a sudden, it starts affecting the communication that you have between you and your spouse. So it's not, there are keeping secrets from your spouse, but there's also that part where, you know what I mean? That is not just about being intentionally secretive. It's about and sometimes it happens, you know, that can happen on accident. But when it starts becoming a pattern, it's because you don't find it important to communicate that with your spouse. And so your spouse is going to start realizing this, start feeling that, hey, I'm being left out, or something happened. How you never told me that, or why didn't you tell me? And oh no, it was taken care. You know, that's how. Those are the slow ways of those things happening.
Yeah, I think you mentioned all the points right there.
Oh, so sorry.
That's good. Okay, so number one is most meetings and conversations are kept secret from your spouse. Second is you say and do things with someone you never would have in front of your spouse. Okay, and
I've seen that.
That has happened. You know, that's something you normally wouldn't do in front of your spouse, but you just kind of do it, and you think it's not, no one is noticing it. It happens. Okay. Number three, you arrange private talk time with them. Okay. And I'm leaving a little pause there because I want you to really think about it. If you find yourselves doing things like that, You
That's a
know,
no-go.
that's no. Not only is that is not a temptation. That's actually an emotional affair that could be happening. Okay.
That's super
Yeah.
dangerous right there.
Number four is you share things with them that you don't with your spouse. And so those are things you have to be careful. That's how it's almost, that's like the hook. That's like the final hook. Wow, I feel so much better talking to this person because I can tell them this, I can tell them that, and you don't share that with the spouse. That is not good. Go ahead and read that Proverbs 10:9.
Proverbs 10:9. People with integrity walk safely, but those who follow crooked paths will slip and fall.
And people do. That's why a third to half slip and fall. And not only that, this is the part. Um, the Word of God talks about how the up from the second to the third generation of sins follow. Like for example, the sins of the father follow second and third generation, but it's actually referring to the iniquities. Iniquities are sins of the heart. Okay, so that's why you would find sometimes good marriages that have all their kids go through affairs in their marriages and divorce. But then they see the married couple that never went through divorce, but maybe there's a possibility that 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 somebody in the relationship struggled with emotional affair and maybe had committed, maybe had pornography issues, maybe has something, and they didn't take care of it. They just kind of pushed to the side, and then next thing you know, all their kids are going through that. It's a curse that happens because we don't give it to the Lord. So it's very, you have to be honest about it, tackle it, because it's not just about you. It's going to affect your family in all kinds of ways. And it may not even be seen in all, it may not be seen now. You may not, things are good now, my kids are okay right now, but you never know. And you want to make sure that the blessings of the Lord are the ones that are following you. The Word of God is full of blessings, okay? But we have to walk in obedience, and we have to make sure that we get rid of all these iniquities that are in our hearts, because it does affect.
I think it's super important for us to realize that an affair doesn't just affect. I mean, you mentioned it, but I don't think people realize how detrimental and how much damage it causes to your children. The things that your children will have to go through. These are the two people that they love the most in their life. These are the people that, when they tell me that they love me, it's a reflection. When I see mom and dad, they love each other. Okay, so mom and dad love each other. So that love that they have for me, it's a reciprocating love. So when they see that the two people that they love the most, that's an example of love that has defined love for them, because as children they don't know the way that they receive love and understand love is through their parents. So when they see that those two people, that love is fractured, then it creates an insecurity in them. And so it's super important that it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. The effects that it will have on your children is very detrimental. Insecurities, trust. Children often have to think which side they have to choose. And I'm not talking about just young children. I'm talking about older children, as well. But just as detrimental as it is, there's also there's blessing. God, when God is brought back into the situation, into that marriage, God can restore. There's we were just talking about this with someone yesterday. It's about getting yourself back up, picking yourself back up, and I'm sorry, I did this wrong. Recognize, shutting that door, once again, shutting that door to the enemy. I did this wrong. I didn't respect dad, or I didn't respect mom in the way that she, or if they're older, older children. If not, you apologize to your spouse, restore, let the kids see that there's a change in the marriage. It's really important. And I think we often forget that, it's just between me and mom and dad, but kids feel everything. and they're affected by that. They're affected by it in such a powerful way.
It's a trauma.
It's a trauma.
It's a trauma that causes a lot of anxiety, and this generation is full of anxiety, and a lot of it has to do with broken homes, broken marriages. It all, the root of it is in the homes.
Everything's affected because remember you did a series about fatherhood and the importance of fatherhood in the and I know families that they got divorced, and so the children don't have their dads there. And Father's Day comes, and all these, all these holidays come, and they feel that void, they feel that emptiness. It affects you as a father, it affects you as a mother. You have to work extra hard to make up for that lost time of relationship. And I mean, we can go so much further into this. That's why God gives us these warning signs. It gives us these emotions when something is not right. Hey, mi amor, or Dennis, something this happened and I wasn't comfortable with it. You can get offended. The husbands can get offended. My job is to tell you how I feel, or you can say, "Oh, I didn't get that. I didn't realize that," and then we fix it. But we have to be able. Marriages have to be able to be free to tell each other how they feel, what they're uncomfortable with, and so forth, because at the end of the day, we protect our marriage. We protect our family, recognizing that this relationship affects our children.
Very good. That's very good, baby. That was awesome. You did great. All right, so how to end emotional affair? Okay, one, you can flirt with your wife, but don't flirt with other people. Okay.
Amen.
So stop flirting. Okay. How do you end emotional affairs? You stop flirting. Okay. And a lot of times we don't want to call what it is. We don't want to call it, "Oh no, I'm not flirting. I'm just complimenting."
It could be something as I had someone call me the other day and was upset because her husband says "mama" to her. "Look, mama," and then she heard him say that to someone else. And that was I was like, okay, but to her, that's her word. Why would you use that for someone else? And so my response was, well, tell him that bothered you. No, he should know, No, he doesn't know. So you have to talk about it.
There's a lot of marriages, especially in the Hispanic culture, that'll say "mi amor." Vente aquí, mi amor, and I'm like, man, they kind of ruined it, because now I can't, you can't use that for your spouse. And if you use for your spouse, then you just like putting them in the same,
the same category.
Yeah. So stop flirting. Okay. Number 2 is stay out of high risk places when you'll be alone. Okay, and that happens quite a bit. I'm telling you, all these things that we're talking about is usually what happens in every affair.
So here's a question for you. Like, can someone have an affair with, we know the answer, but can pornography be considered an affair? Yeah, I mean, that's something that, because the betrayal is the same. You feel the betrayal, the all the things that the emotional roller coaster that is the same. So when you said this, I just realized it. So stay out of high risk places. So if you know that you're tempted to watch things that you're not supposed to watch, go to bed with your spouse.
Yeah.
You gotta start training. How many days?
Alone.
How many days does it take to break a habit? I don't know. I think it's 21 days.
They say something like that. I think it's
something like that.
It changes every 10 years.
But I mean, that besides, there's a spiritual issue that needs to be confronted. But what I'm saying is, this is a great example. Get yourself out of those situations. Instead of going to eat alone, make sure that your spouse is with you. I don't know. You have to change. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
That reminds me of the attack that was against the former Vice President Mike Pence, when he mentioned that he would not go anywhere without his wife. He won't go anywhere to meet with another female if the wife wasn't there. and they criticize them and
That
all those
why
things.
can't
So
yeah.
old fashioned, so old fashioned. That's not right. That's being not giving the woman the right to be seen in the same angle, and it's because many people ignore the sin issue. We there's a sin issue in this world. Okay, it's not about the fact that if a husband struggles with lust, that he's an evil person. It's just the fact that we live in a sinful world, and sin is around. There's a spiritual war that's going on, spiritual war that is going on. We can't ignore it. Okay, and because we can't ignore it, then we have to set healthy boundaries, and so that's one of them that you're talking about. Staying out of high risk, stay out of places where you're not going to be alone. Where you're going to be alone. I take my wife. I don't meet with anybody without my wife. Okay, that's just. It's not a Mike Pence thing. It's just a godly thing to do. It's a wisdom thing that God encourages us to do. Okay, number 3, break off the relationship. That one is tough sometimes for people to admit that they need to let it go. This friendship is not worth it. My family is more important. My marriage is more important. Okay. And number 4 is turn your heart back to your spouse. And this is something that we need help from the Lord for all of this. We really do, because when you are in a state of an emotional affair, this is really it's like wearing shackles.
You convince yourself that
it's a trap.
You literally convince yourself that your spouse isn't the one for you, or you start focusing so much on the negative, so that way you can convince yourself that that's not for, and you lose interest, you lose attraction, you lose that intimacy with your spouse, because you convince yourself otherwise, but pray to God, pray to the Lord to give you back a heart or eyes for your spouse, that you can see the value in him or her, that you can see, okay, God, please help me see the value that the way that you see them, because you're never going to see, the way that God sees us is amazing. He sees us through Jesus. He sees the best in us. Even though we're broken, even though we're flawed, he sees the best in us. So ask God, put in me your vision of my spouse, so that I can love him or love her, value her, treasure her, love him, treasure him, those are things that's once again your part in the equation. There's God's part, but there's a part that you have to play in restoring your marriage.
Yeah, that's so good. And I don't think there's a more powerful prayer that we can ask God than that one. Than to say, God, let me see what you see. Let me see her value. Because the moment we lose that sight of who our spouse is, what God has put in, like for me, one of the things that helps me tremendously is seeing your value, what God put in your heart, of who you are, who you can be, how God uses you, how God moves you, what matters to you. Those things sometimes is not very easy for us to remember, or even times not even see it. Sometimes we go into a marriage and there's things that we love about our spouse, and later on you find out there's other things that you got to deal with. There's other things that you may not like as much, and so those things start to put more focus on, oh man, I didn't know she was like this. Oh man, she snores. I can't take it anymore. Lord,
snore.
And so you start focusing. I remember one time that somebody had said, I don't know what to do with my wife. She snores, and I don't know. She won't do anything about it, and that became a priority to them. That became the main issue. So sometimes things are going to happen, and so we need to ask God, let me see what you see, because right now all I see is, the soul train coming through, like, the loud noise. So you got to be careful, that you don't lose focus, because your focus has to be on what's valuable. And sometimes we miss out on that. So if there's any way if you really want God to help you turn your heart back to your spouse, is to see the value, okay? And to also see, sometimes what helps is knowing who you are yourself too, because like you're not all that either. You have your issues too, and sometimes we look over other people's issues before our own issues and realize, wait a minute, I have issues too, just like my spouse does. So
Dennis, the other day I took Ruthie to get her. She has a charm bracelet. Her for her quince. What we did was we got her charms for her 15th birthday, and she took it in to get polished and stuff, and when we were leaving, our car kept showing in a lot, like something was wrong. One of the doors was open, but we were driving away, and Ruthie goes, wait, and she looks, and the chain was sticking out the door. Now bear in mind, there are so many, that charm bracelet alone is like over $1,000 because it has so many charms on it, and it was about to get lost. She goes, oh my gosh. And I said, give it to me. I put it down. And anyways, while you were saying that, I was thinking, is not just knowing the worth of the person, because just like that charm bracelet, you can replace it. You can replace things, but it's remembering, it's knowing that bracelet is not just because of the cost. It's because the journey of the memories of the what it means, what it signified, the time that it was in her life,
the struggle to even sometimes get there.
So that's the same thing. Maybe someone out there, oh, okay, well, I can get remarried. It's when you start seeing your spouse as as more than just as a deeper value of, man, she was there for me when this happened to me, or he was there for me when I was broken, when I was shattered into pieces, and he helped. You start. It's not about what you can do for me or what you bring to the table. It's about the journey. It's about the sacrifices that were made along the way. That's the value that with Jesus Christ, with the Lord, with God, I'm sure that when he looks at our value, like I said, he sees us through Jesus. It's the sacrifice of his son that Jesus sacrificed himself on the cross for us. That's what makes us valuable. That's what truly
the
brings
price
us,
that he made.
It was the price that was paid, So when we start seeing our spouses in that way, not just what you can do for me, but my goodness, the journey what has happened all the way for us to get here, then I think we can help restore some marriages.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, one of the ways the enemy can attack is, well, I maybe I married this person without asking God for approval and things like that. And so sometimes we think, well, maybe this is not the right person for me, so I need to, and so I will be very cautious on even thinking that way. I think the most important thing, if you're a believer, seek God, pray, have God, the same question, God, what's, let me see what you see about my spouse, my what potentials they have, what giftings do they have, what value do they have according to you, Lord. And if they're not a believer, pray for their salvation, but don't walk away from a covenant that you made. Secret number one, we mentioned it earlier, is make the covenant decision, right? To never turn your heart away from your spouse. Okay. Number two, and I want to go to that. Number two is be sensitive to your spouse's emotional needs and meet them. Okay. Now remember, the major needs of men and women are different. Okay. For men, primarily is honor, sex, right? Friendship, and support at home. Okay. Now for women, primarily need is security, communication, affection that is non-sexual, and leadership. I know you get excited about the word leadership when you like, I know I'm gonna say something that's gonna make me look bad, but this is just so you know that we got issues too. My wife bought a plant. What is that called? That
it's a Japanese boxwood.
Japanese boxwood. And she's been hoping for that thing not to die because it's been, what, like 2 weeks?
I've been trying to keep it alive.
Yeah, and so she reminded me already twice, two days in a row, I think, reminding me it's going to die. We need to do something about it. So she's looking for leadership, someone to say, don't worry, I'll do it. I haven't done it yet, so please, I'm sorry. I'm confessing to the world.
I'll keep you posted.
Okay, keep me posted. Keep us, well, she'll keep you posted. Okay, anyway, so there you go. We all got issues, okay? Now, how do affairs happen? Okay, this is the reality of it, is that a selfish man and a dishonoring woman offend each other and hurt each other. They do not meet each other's needs. It's whenever you don't meet each other's needs. You know, a woman that is dishonoring will push her husband away. A selfish man will push their wife away. You know, because they're not meeting each other's needs. Marriage is about serving one another. It's not about being served. It's about serving one another. You know, Jesus came to serve. The man comes to serve his family. And so, and that's one of the things that we talked about even on Sunday to the man. The man, they're providers. They're warriors. They fight for their family. They protect their family. They nurture, they take care of the needs of the family, the same way of their spouse. And they're lovers. They know how to, they need to be able to meet the needs, emotional needs of their spouse. Okay, so it's very important. Let's go ahead and read Deuteronomy 5:21.
Okay, Deuteronomy 5:21. You must not covet your neighbor's wife. You must not covet your neighbor's house or land, male or female servant, ox or donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor.
I like that. Covet. That sounds so fancy. Covet. That should not covet. Covet. I like it.
Wait, did I pronounce it wrong?
Yeah, it sounded much better, baby. It sounded much better.
Okay.
Okay. So.
Are you sure I pronounced it wrong?
It's on recording. You want me to rewind it?
Oh, no. Okay.
Okay. So because the couple is now wounded, they turn their hearts away and are vulnerable to someone else meeting their unmet needs. That's another reason why affairs happen. They're hurt and they haven't dealt with it, and so they turn their hearts away. Okay. So that's why it's so important to not allow the sun to go down. You know, don't let anger stay in your heart for too long. Take care of it. Deal with it, because sooner or later the enemy is gonna. That's when people say, I deserve to be happy. You know, I deserve to have a little fun. I deserve to have a good day today. You know, and that's when you go and you buy ice cream that you shouldn't buy. But you know what? Ice cream sounds good. Okay, anyways. But you have to be careful that you don't fall into those traps of self-pity and you know what, I'm hurt. I shouldn't go through this. I deserve better than this. So you got to be careful about that, okay? The door for a potential affair is wide open whenever you neglect meeting your spouse's needs over a prolonged period of time. How can you keep this from happening in your marriage? You know, think about that. Let us know in the comments below. You know, how can you keep, you know, whenever the door for potential affair is wide open, whether you neglect your meeting your spouse's needs, how do you avoid that? How can you keep that from happening? Okay. Okay. The third reason why affairs happen. Okay. I want to share this. How to keep affairs from happening. Okay. This is very important. You love your spouse and meet their emotional needs, and you're good to go, buddy. That's all you got to do. You got to love your spouse and meet their emotional needs.
That means conversations right before you go to bed.
Yeah.
How was your day? And it being, the response is more than a one-word sentence.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say?
Yes. No.
Oh, yes. So love your spouse and meet their emotional needs. And the other one is, do not turn your heart away, even if you're going through difficult times. don't do it. Don't turn your heart away. In other words, don't forsake your wife. Don't forsake your husband. Don't lose focus on the value. Don't stop seeing the value that they have. God put a value on every one of you. You know, that's why I love the passage about how God put an eternity in each of us. There's something in us that reflect the image of God, because you know, obviously one person can never reflect the complete image of God. Okay, but each one of us has something, a little speck of what God has, a little light, and so we have to remember that we are people that love God and trust God, and therefore God has given us the grace to be able to love our spouse, right? To meet their emotional needs and to never forsake them.
Dennis, you know, a lot of people, I'm sure, this is me thinking, I think when people have, in a marriage, they have the huge argument and then they leave because they're so mad at each other, that's where they make the biggest mistakes, you know, because they're so angry with their spouse and they leave, they turn away, even in the difficult time, they turn away, and then they're just gonna, some people will go, and there's that one person waiting to hear your problems, and then there's that one person that will meet, you know what I mean? And that's when the biggest mistakes are made. So I think it's important that even when, it's happened with us, like even when we have disagreements or where there's an argument of some sort, we won't leave the table. Like we'll wait it out till the end, and then okay, there were times where we're upset at each other.
It's like 3, 4, and 5 in the morning,
and then you're like, you know something, I'm tired. I need you to know that I love you, and we'll take care of this in the morning.
Yeah, that's all you got to do. I figured that out a little late.
And then you're like,
yeah.
But that we, even in our anger, and the word tells us, you know, don't. That's what it's talking about not letting the sun rise in your anger.
Yeah,
you know?
the only thing that you should have marinating in your heart is the word of God.
And
not marinate the anger.
The anger. But never turn away, even in the hardest of times. Make yourself or train yourself to still put that person as a priority, even in the worst of times. You know.
That's good. Well, we're running out of time, so I want to wrap it up. Okay, and I want to wrap it up by saying this. Okay, it's important that every couple understand that long before an affair becomes physical, it's first emotional. Okay, there's a lot of emotional affairs happening that we need to put it to a stop, because it's affecting marriages. And not only that, you may still be around in your marriage, but the people that struggle, that end up being hurt the most is our children, because the word of God is clear, you know, that the sins of the father is passed on, you know, the iniquities of the father. It's more specific. Okay, it's first emotional. So preventing affairs requires a dedication to faithfulness and a refusal to turn your heart away. Does your spouse stress you out or irritate you when they talk about their needs? That's one way to say, okay, am I forsaking her? Right? If so, then your heart may be turning away. Even if you're frustrated and say, I don't care anymore, your heart has turned away. When you don't value her emotional needs, when you don't value that she is needing attention right now, that her focus matters, that what's going on in her heart matters, okay? And you ignore it, your heart has turned away from her.
Dennis, for a male, if you're constantly putting down your spouse, your husband, or you're making him feel that he's not good at anything, or that, you know, you're constantly pointing negative things out, you know, bickering, or, you know, what is it? Where you're nagging. There's someone out there that's going to give words of you know, flower. What is it when you sprinkle some
Make
pretty
you feel
words
good.
and make someone feel, you know. So it's important
Special.
that, because you're talking about the females, but women, it's important that we honor our husbands, that we in how we speak to them, or in our actions. You know, it's important. That honor is so important, because what you're not doing, there's always going to be someone that may be willing to do that, and that's what's going to draw the attention from your spouse. So it goes both ways. Men's males or husbands meet the female needs, but women need to learn how to honor their husband with their words and their actions. Yes.
That's very good. Hard times comes to everyone. In marriages, hard times comes to everyone. You got to decide now, when challenging times arrive, you will keep your heart turned toward your spouse and meet their needs. Your hearts must turn to their, stay with your spouse. Never forsake your spouse and meet their needs, and do the right thing first, and passion will return if it has left. Amen. So I want to thank you for joining us. I hope and pray that this has been a blessing to you. If you liked it, go ahead and hit the like button, share it as much as you can. We really just want to share our hearts so you guys get to know. And we really want to talk about all kinds of things, all kinds of heart things that we have to deal with, okay? Everything is matters of the heart, and so that's why we want to share with you. We love you very much. We hope to see you physically. We have our English service here at 9 a.m. every Sunday morning, and God bless you, okay?